Just because someone can't help you doesn't mean that you can't be helped. We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Teralyn and Therapist Jenn, and this is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Today, we have a special guest and colleague, Dr. Josh Friedman.
There
Well,
he
that did not
is.
work
Hi,
out.
guys.
Sorry.
What? There he is. Put him in the middle.
There we go.
Woohoo!
All
Yeah,
right,
I
we've
have to get
got
in the
we've
middle.
got Dr. Josh here, Dr. Josh Friedman. He earned his doctorate in psychology from New York University, did postdoctoral training in psychoanalysis from the Training and Research Institute for Self-Psychology in New York City. And after working in the field for a few years, he realized something was missing from traditional mental health treatment. Curiosity and a chance meeting led him to discover the world of nutritional psychology, which teaches that many psychological issues are caused or made worse by the underlying biochemical nutritional deficiencies. And along the way, he became certified as a yoga teacher, incorporating emphasis on breathing techniques, meditation, and movement into his work as essential tools for working with mental health at the deepest levels. And to enhance his effectiveness in helping people heal and grow, he became certified as a holistic health counselor at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York and went on to earn a diploma of comprehensive nutrition from Huntington College of Health Sciences. Dr. Josh has been, he has been led to go deeper. I don't know if I'm reading this right. I think there might
I
be a
don't
typing
know.
error. I'm going to read exactly what the words say. He has been lead to go deeper. You have been
Oh,
lead to go deeper, Josh, just so you know.
please.
Into the biochemistry of mental health, and he has become a functional diagnostic nurse practitioner, a certified functional medicine practitioner, and studying with mental health nutrition greats such as the Julia Ross, Dr. Charles Grant, and Dr. William Walsh. And of course, Dr. Josh started the Alternative Mental Health Solution,
Of
which helps
course.
people find and fix root cause of mental health struggles. That is a lot. That's a mouthful.
That's a lot.
Woo!
That is a lot.
I've had
Listen,
my head in a book for the last like 40 years.
Yes.
You know what? Even if there is a grammatical error in this, it don't
Yeah.
matter because there is so much clout on what I just read. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Oh my gosh. Welcome to the
Thank you.
show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So I
Yes.
just Josh and I have been Facebook friends for a long time. And then we weren't, and then we were again. And then I finally got to meet him in person at the IMMH conference a few weeks ago, which I was
Oh,
so incredibly happy to not just meet you, but to listen to you speak there too, because your message is very clear to other mental health professionals. And we are going to talk about that today.
yeah. It was great to meet you there too. So by
Yes.
the way, this is about gaslighting. So
Yeah.
we fell off on Facebook because I got kicked off of Facebook during COVID for speaking about vaccines. So
Whoa.
I got kicked off for about 4 months, so I had to rebuild for like speech.
Ah.
Yeah.
That is
So
fascinating.
so
Okay.
there was a there that was, and I was shocked that that happened. And I
Yeah.
knew it was happening to like people with big, like much bigger names, but like it was happening to us little guys out there that were just like trying to
Well,
share information,
Oh.
ask like questions about medical treatments that we weren't quite sure about.
interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you are bigger than you think you
Was
are,
just
Josh.
gonna say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Me,
Pretty
me,
sure
me,
what I just
me,
read.
me and
Mm,
RFK, we're
Yeah.
you
hanging
got
out.
Yes. For sure. Well, that is very interesting because
Yeah.
when Jen and I were looking for guests, I had said, I know Josh Friedman. I'm going to ask him. And then I went on Facebook and I'm like, he unfriended me.
Yeah, so I
No,
got that
he did
from
not.
all these people. People were like, "Did I
yeah.
do
Oh,
something wrong? Like
oh,
you stop?
interesting.
Did you defriend me?" So I had to have all these
Oh.
conversations with
See,
people.
so
Conversations.
all right, now Terry, you can take back all
Mhm.
the shitty things you said about
Oh,
Josh. You can
I
take
did
them
not
back
say.
now. It's okay.
Sorry. Anyway,
Yeah,
no. Yes, I am so glad that you're here. And I would like to get the conversation started with you were, it's seemingly in
yeah,
traditional mental health care for a
Yeah.
while. And you mentioned in your story you had some pivotal moments. So I'd like to kind of go back to your traditional care and how
Yeah.
you evolved. Yeah.
So I trained in New York, just as a sort of psychoanalytically oriented psychotherapist. I went to NYU, um, and my wife at the time, we're now divorced, but she was having some hormonal problems, so she ended up going to see someone that called himself a biochemical nutritionist. And this was like pre-functional medicine. I'd never heard the term functional medicine, and I thought what she was doing was kind of kooky. And he put her on a what I now know to be like a paleo diet. He started giving her bioidentical hormones, and then my wife was a writer, and she was going to write a book about him and his work, and so we started sort of being friends with him. And at the time, I was working at a eating disorder center, big eating disorder center in New York called the Renfrew Center. And he said, "Do you know?" He said to me in talking, he said, just chatting, he said, "Do you know why your patients don't get better on Prozac?" So Prozac had just sort of hit the market. And it was like the sort of go to treatment for anorexia. And I
Hmm.
was like, well, I think they're very psychologically ill, and it's an entrenched disorder. And he said they don't get better because they don't have enough protein in their diets. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And so then he educated me about amino acids, and that break proteins broken down into amino acids. Amino acids become the neurotransmitters. And if you don't have enough protein and you don't have enough zinc, you're not going to make the neurotransmitters like serotonin. If you don't have enough serotonin, Prozac's not going to help. And so that was like, it was like a lights on moment for me. And I all of a sudden realized everything, just that one little tidbit. I realized all the things I had never learned in grad school. Like, I realized I had spent so much time learning all these amazing theories, and I was a really dedicated student. But I realized no one had ever mentioned food to me in 7 years of grad school. So I was really excited, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing." And we worked on multidisciplinary IOP programs and day treatment programs. The best eating disorder treatment available at the time. Eating disorder treatment was pretty new. And I was like, I met this guy, and he told me this story, and we have to have him come to talk to our patients. We have to have him come to talk to the staff. And no one was interested. And I was like, wait,
Been there.
didn't you hear me? I just
Yeah.
said that this guy knows why our patients are not getting better. And they
Yeah.
were like, and there were psychiatrists in the room, and there were dietitians, and there were therapists, and there were dance therapists and art therapists, and there were yoga
Yeah.
teachers. There were amazing, it was an amazing place. But no one was interested. And so for me, that was like the first moment I got that the field wasn't addressing the whole picture. And so
Hmm.
there was a school in New York called. Have you guys heard the school, Institute for Integrative Nutrition?
I
Yes.
have,
It
yes.
was this like amazing place, and I went before they went online. I went before, kind
Oh.
of before the internet, where there were 3,000 students in the room.
Back
And
in the day of
Wow.
the wheel, there was a
The
wheel and a
wheel. That was
mouse.
the
There was
wheel.
a
It was
Mouse.
all. It was like
fire, like
primary
fire. Yeah.
nutrition and
Yeah.
secondary nutrition, and so I saw Mark Hyman there.
Yes.
I saw like, and he was new. No, like he was like just like forming functional medicine. I saw like
Hmm.
Neil Bernard, like all these people that became like huge. And I was like, oh, these are my people. And then I started bringing all this information to my friends and colleagues, and they were like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you studying this? How is this relevant to our work? I
Yeah.
brought it to my psychoanalytic colleagues, and they were like, no, we don't talk about nutrition, we analyze. And I realized, like, oh, I'm not one of them anymore. And that didn't mean I wasn't going to be a therapist. And it didn't mean, but it meant and I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea. And so the same biochemical nutritionist, he told me to read. He was like, "You need to read The Mood Cure," which is
Yes.
Julia Ross's book.
Yeah.
I read The Mood Cure in like 2 days. I called Julia Ross. I said, "Hey, Julia, can you help me? Can you?" And she was pretty eager. And so I went out to a training that she was doing in California. That was probably about 20 years ago. And then I just started using amino acids with people. And then she would supervise me. And then, like, bird by bird, I started trying to figure out, like, oh, blood sugar. Oh, like, and there was no courses. There was, the internet wasn't really starting. I didn't know where to look. So I would just like stumble upon something and I'd go to like the Strand bookstore and read a book. And then, but it was like so meandering. But so that was the time I was like, okay, this is something. And then years later, I found IMMH. I actually, I actually, my, I had a daughter and she was chronically ill and she lived in the hospital for about a year. And then she needed to have a small intestine transplant. And so I moved from New York City to Omaha, Nebraska. And just by chance, Dr. William Shaw, who created IMMH, was in Kansas. And so I got word that he was starting to do like workshops. This is like 10 years, 5 years um, before IMMH started. So I would go down there and sit amongst like a bunch of doctors. And I don't know if you went, Teralyn, if you saw Dr. Shaw speak at all. He
I
gave
don't.
the
Go ahead.
guy is like the guy is a complete brainiac, like complete. He's a genius. So
I feel
he's
like everybody there was a brainiac, but anyway.
no, but
Yeah.
he's a brainiac amongst brainiacs, and like
Okay.
I was like, oh my god, like what's this guy saying? I know intuitively it's important, but I understand none of what he's saying because I failed out of freshman biology in college.
Mm,
Like I was like, oh,
Yep.
I'm a failed
Yep.
medical person. I
Yep.
thought I'd go to
yeah.
medical school,
Yes.
and I was like, up, you failed
Yep.
biology.
I
Everyone's like,
I failed
you're
Psych 101. I had to take it twice. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
shit, I can't be a therapist. Like,
Oh, I'm
nope.
totally, yeah. It's amazing to me now because I had terrible learning disabilities when I was a kid. And
Mhm.
so like to be on to like do any of this is sort of funny to me. It's like ridiculous and it's just like, okay, like I
Yeah.
guess I'll just go on their podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's sort of how I started. And I was very unintentional about it. I just like and the I just followed my there's a Joseph Campbell has a line like this idea of following your bliss. And like I've never needed to do this. I've always like had the like my psychotherapy practice. And so I would just take money. I would just like take whatever money I had and go learn something. And
Mhm.
I think really I just never stopped because I've been insanely interested in it. And my life has been a series of like periods where I was really like about 10 years where I've been really interested in something. So I want to be a photographer. So I was like very passionate and not very good at it. Like I was pretty good, but not great, but I was like very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And so with this stuff, I'm sort of the same way. Like I'm very enthusiastic and I just keep showing up. And
Yes.
when you keep, and like that's how you do, so I realized like you do things by showing up earnestly, having an open heart, and like just learning what you can learn. And the thing I've learned as I've gotten older, like doing things before you're ready, and also like you don't have to be perfect to like help people. And
Yeah.
the more real you are, kind of the better. So
Yeah, because I think so many therapists, psychologists, whatever, get caught up in the idea that we do have to know everything
yeah,
in order to give knowledge out, right? Like, yeah, Jen's
I
pointing at
say this to
herself.
her all the time, and she's like, "Will you stop it? Like,
Yes.
you're enough of
yeah.
an expert. Go."
That's
Just
right.
go
Yes.
with it. And I'm like, but I'm not. I got to read another book. I
That's
gotta
Yeah.
get more research. I gotta meet more people. I can't deprescribe people. I need this and I need this. And she's like, no.
right.
I taught you amino acids. Go.
Yeah. I stayed on the sidelines a long time, and I had the illusion. I've always had the illusion that people know more than I know. So why should I be helping anyone?
Yeah.
Because everyone knows more than me. And I'm like, my basic assumption about myself is I don't know. And so I don't know if you ever saw Garden State, the movie, when the guy goes into the neurologist's office and he has all the diplomas on his wall, and then you look up and he has all the diplomas on the ceiling. So I've always thought, if I have another piece of paper, like if you saw my
Oh
office, you'd
my,
be like,
the
there's,
affliction. I have the
yeah.
same affliction. Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's like
You guys are
it's like
twins.
this idea, the illusion that the next piece of paper is going to be the one that's going to make you feel worthy enough, smart enough, like skilled enough to go and do it. And really the only thing, like, all of us are at the place where there are people to help. And the truth is, we're like people on the ground. Like, we're people working with people every day that are desperate and suffering. The people that write the books, you can't like refer someone to Mark Hyman unless they're like a famous person or something.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, and I think we all fall into this. Like, I have friends in LA and New York, and I'm like, oh, you can probably find someone super easy that does amino acid therapy. And you actually, there are people, but it's not like there's a million people. It's not like there's
No.
like a small number of people that are stupid or brave enough to do what we've done, which is to like, why are you? My father is very practical. He grew up poor. He became a dentist. He worked as a dentist. Like, and he's like, why don't you just do your work? Like, why do you need to go spend $10,000 and learn neurofeedback or whatever? Like, he's like, he can't understand. And one, he doesn't realize it's a pathology, sort of.
It is. I was
Like,
just
it's
going
an
to say,
illness. I
there's
have
a
an
whole
illness.
pathology to this.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Listen, I prefer the word affliction.
Okay. It
Yeah,
is.
it's an affliction.
It's an affliction.
Yes.
Oh boy.
What do you think? So, did you get pushback from other people in your field? And tell us about that. Yeah.
So, uh, I got my wife. My wife is a yoga teacher, and
She's gonna be on the show.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, I heard she's going to be on the show. She's
Yep.
amazing. She just wrote a book. She worked in the Dean Ornish program for reversing heart disease without drugs and surgery. She's a really good, big public speaker. So when we got together, she encouraged me, kicked me in the ass to start speaking publicly. And I was like, I don't know. I'm little. I can't do it. And she was like, you know enough. You don't have to know everything. Go and give a talk on lifestyle medicine. Go give a talk on amino acids. So I started giving public talks about 15 years ago. I mean, nothing like IMMH, just like at the yoga center where we work, for our professional therapist organization in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, to nurse practitioners. And people would literally, 15 years ago, I would be giving talks about tryptophan and 5-HTP to raise serotonin and zinc levels being connected to hydrochloric acid, like, and proteins and blood sugar and like the same stuff I talk about now. And on more than one occasion, people stood up in the back. People left, first of all. These are colleagues, some of them psychotherapy colleagues, some of them medical people, nurse practitioners, physicians. On more than one occasion, people stood up and screamed, "You're lying."
Oh,
Really?
So, but this was,
I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah.
yeah, and this was about 15 years ago. And this information, none of this information was new 15 years ago, really.
yeah.
Like,
no.
this
Yeah.
information, the orthomolecular psychiatrists were talking about this stuff in the 50s. Some of these, the amino acid work was in the 60s, 70s, I think. So
But
15 years
Josh,
ago.
do you think it's because you were saying there was a lot of colleagues? Do you think it's because our professions are so siloed in what we are allowed to learn and use.
Yeah, but
You
I
know?
think this nutritional information, while it's in the psychiatric and psychological literature, like if you look at the literature,
Sure.
zinc
But no one
deficiency.
learned. We're not taught it though. Like what you said
No,
about
that
7 years
no,
of, right? Like Terry and I have talked about this so much. We have never once the word amino acids, that those two words were never in one single damn thing worth of 8 years
right,
worth of school that I learned ever. It
Mm-mm.
didn't
right.
exist. It's like we couldn't touch that.
That's
It
right.
wasn't part of what we do.
Yeah, I think for all of these audiences, it's quite far abreast from their knowledge base. And
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think in psychotherapy, we are we're very much stepchildren to psychiatry, to medicine.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're taught is you do your psychotherapeutic thing. If it doesn't work, you can do a little bit of lifestyle. You want to ask people about alcohol, maybe
Yeah.
sugar, exercise, sleep. But then if people have real serious problems, you refer them to a
Yeah.
psychiatrist, to a nurse practitioner. Um, but I think this nutritional piece has barely penetrated any of
Yeah.
these fields. Though I do want to say that that we were at IMMH this year, Integrative Medicine for Mental Health. Um, the last live conference they had was 5 years ago, and
Mm.
5 years ago there might have been 30 or 40 therapists there. So this is a very academic, biochemically oriented medical conference.
Yeah.
And it's
Lots
like
of doctors, lots of MDs there.
mostly
Mhm.
MDs,
Yep.
nurse practitioners, prescribers.
Mhm.
Um, this year, there were 300 therapists there.
Nice.
And I think no one was prepared for it. So I spoke there at this last one, and I only spoke because I went to the online conference that they did last year, and it was like completely biochemical, and there were great talks if you had 10 years experience. So for
Mhm.
me, for Teralyn, for you, if we like, you have the knowledge base where I can understand 50% of it, 60%,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because I'm self-trained, so it's a second language to me. but but biochemistry is a second language to most physicians anyway. But
Mhm.
um, so what was I saying? That I just lost my
Oh, the
place.
amount of therapists that were there this
Oh,
year.
and I spoke to the director Kiki, and I was like, you need a track for therapists. You need to, like, because this field is changing. We're in the middle of a paradigm shift. People
Yeah.
are actually starting to be interested in this.
Mhm.
Um, and she was like, okay, why don't you do it? And I was like, oh, I'm too little.
Oh,
There
crap.
must be someone smarter than me. And I was like, and she
Uh,
was like, no, you can do it. And I was like, okay. So I spent a year fretting about it.
Yeah, I would never have known. I would
I
never have you did such a good
Thank
job,
you.
and you
It
were
was
so calm up there about it,
it
like
felt so good. And the
yeah.
thing that felt really good was that I got that people needed this. That there's a huge interest. That
Mhm.
I've been around, Teralyn's been around a long time, that like at the beginning we were weirdos.
yeah.
And that people were like, why are you doing this? I remember in like around 2000, 1998, when I was finishing grad school, my colleagues being like, what are you doing going to nutrition school? Like, it made zero sense.
Yeah.
And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was like, I'm just feeling it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And it was like, I just felt it was intuitive. I was like, I think this is something. I'm going to do it. But
Mhm.
there's a huge change in the zeitgeist. So I'm going to tell you something. I got this is amazing. I got called by the American Psychological Association this week,
Oh.
and they asked if I would, and the director of continuing education. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but the director of continuing education was at IMMH, and he saw the talk, and he was like, our members would really benefit from this approach. So
Yay.
this
Holy
Wow.
is
crap. Yes.
it has nothing to do with me. It just has to
No.
do with the field is pregnant. The
Yes.
field is exploding. There we are part of a new field that is emerging. That there's a new field of nutritional psychology, nutritional psychiatry that's going to be something, functional medicine, mental health, integrated mental health, whatever you call it. This is a something. And we're that generation that's going to like help bring it forward.
Yeah.
And then the next generation, like I was shocked and pleased to see how many 30, 28, 25-year-old like newbie therapists were there because it's their language. It's
Yeah.
not our language. They intuitively understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, how can what you eat be connected to how you feel emotionally? Like, to
Well, I
them, it
think
makes complete sense.
It
well, I
does.
think that they were raised, the younger generation was raised in a time where we did start looking at food and fitness and that kind of stuff differently, not necessarily connected to mental health, but connected to physical well-being.
Yeah,
That stuff when I was growing up wasn't a thing. We didn't
Yeah.
even drink water. Like,
right.
so the younger generation, it makes a lot of sense that there's going to be a group of those therapists and social workers that are going to take a keen
Mhm.
interest in this, you
Right.
know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I wanna tie this in, Josh, to something that you had said to us in correspondence about this idea of treatment-resistant mental health.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
as you 2 are talking, I'm thinking about, the idea of generationally how the narratives have played out in terms of that idea. Because treatment resistive pieces made more sense to me in saying that terminology when I first started in the field, 17 years ago,
Yeah.
versus to hear it now, I view it very differently. Okay. And I think that newer therapists that are coming into the field, the idea of treatment resistance almost seems some of it almost seems like taboo a bit because, well, how could you be resistant, because their ideas of what treatment is so much broader
Yeah.
than what
Right.
ours were. And you talked about this in correspondence you sent to us, so I wanted to just like slide that one in here, and talking about that, because the idea of how gaslighting that is, and I wonder
Yeah.
if part of it is, as you're talking, I just wonder if it's a level of knowledge that we I don't know, I wasn't given early on. And I would have believed people can be more treatment resistant because guess what? The meds didn't work for you. Guess what? The
Yeah.
psychotherapy didn't work for you. Guess what? The CBT we've been doing isn't working for you. So I guess you're not helpable. Versus now, there's all these other pieces that could really matter and that do matter.
Right.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that, in terms of the gaslighting piece of that and what your experience is.
My, I don't think, in my experience, I think one thing I think that's different in psychotherapy is we've discovered the body. I think the somatic approaches, somatic experiencing, EMDR, yoga therapy approaches, I think are sort of revolutionary. So I think psychedelics, revolutionary. And I think we have much to offer psychotherapeutically. My experience with interfacing with psychiatry is that it hasn't changed much at all in the past 20 years, past 30. I mean, I've been doing this about 30 years, and I think there's like very simple algorithms that they use, that there's like a limited number of medicines. I think they have a few new tools, TMS being one,
Yeah.
transcranial magnetic stimulation. Now they're like sort of stepping into psychedelics using ketamine therapies, and they're still using electroconvulsant therapies. So I think, and there are people that I see that are getting the label treatment resistant or treatment refractory,
Yeah.
um, who have never had basic labs done. So, like the most basic things have never been done. They've never had their thyroid checked. They've never had a B12 level taken. They've never had a C reactive protein taken for inflammation.
Yeah.
They've never had even vitamin D. And I just heard I was on Dr. Greenblatt is doing, Dr. James Greenblatt is doing a lecture for like a workshop, like a 5 session workshop on functional medicine for therapists. And in the last class, he just said it should be for any psychiatrist or any prescriber to not test vitamin D levels and vitamin B12 levels should be
Yeah.
malpractice. So
I agree.
I
I
think there's
will
amazing
100% agree. Mhm.
Mm.
I think there is amazing gaslighting that still happens, that people are told that they just need to live with this. And there, no one, very few patients are told, this is as far as I can take you.
Yeah.
But there are other fields that ask different questions. There's fields that look at all kinds of underlying biochemical triggers, whether it's methylation, whether it's mold, mycotoxins, whether it's infections, whether it's minerals. Like, I mean, there's a
Yeah.
million things. And there's thousands and thousands of skilled practitioners that could help to address, like, take the next phase of treatment. But I don't think much of this information has really penetrated the field. I do think more people are interested around the edges. So, and I think it's very so my wife, again, she's going to be on your podcast, but so she's worked at a Medicare approved program that's been proven to reverse heart disease without drugs and surgery. So this is an incredible thing. Through
Yes.
lifestyle alone, they're reversing heart disease. And how many cardiologists, young cardiologists, do you think know about the Ornish program?
0.
Yeah.
I ask every
1.
single cardiologist I meet, oh, have you heard of the Ornish program? I've never met one cardiologist that has even heard of it. So this is a program that they did 20 years of research to get Medicare approval. That means it's been approved at the highest level for cardiac rehab by the fucking government.
Yeah.
And even doctors don't even know about these programs. Do you know David and Merlene Miller? Is that a name that rings a bell?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
So they are very, very interesting people that will fit this conversation well. They're an older couple. He was a psychologist. They uh, with their friend Terry Gorski, they created the relapse prevention movement within substance abuse treatment. She was a big writer. He was a psychologist. He was also a chronically relapsing alcoholic. And so he tried everything. He went to treatment. He kept on relapsing. They decided to go to Mexico and try IV amino acid therapy with Dr. Hitt.
Yeah.
And so they went down for IVs. He did 14 days of IVs, and he was cured. Never relapsed again. They then spent the next 2 or 3 years trying to convince Dr. Hitt, who was getting older, to give his recipes up
Yeah.
so that they could like introduce them to the world. Finally, they got him to turn over the recipes he was using. They were a big deal. They had sold millions of books. They had friends at Hazleton. They had friends at Betty Ford. All of the big clinics around the country. They went to each of the clinics. They spoke to the clinic director, and none of the clinics were interested in incorporating amino acid therapy drips. This
Gosh.
this would have been about 20 years ago. They
Yeah.
lived outside of Kansas City. I went and visited them a few times. She's passed, sadly, but they were amazing, and they were in tears as they were describing, like, it's like having the cure to cancer that no one cares about. Like, they had
Yep.
the cure to cancer. And would it have helped every addict? Probably not. But
Mhm.
would it have made a huge dent in stabilizing the brain chemistry, body chemistry of
Yep.
many addicts? There's no
Yep.
doubt it would have. I mean, as the Dr. Hitt's work shows, and now other clinics are using them. But I think it's very difficult for truth tellers to penetrate. And truth tellers can have small, enthusiastic followings, but I think it is very, very difficult to go against the machine. in a
Mhm.
way that is going to threaten the bottom line. And I think it's cute when it's a little clinic at Cleveland Clinic, like a little functional medicine clinic. But when it threatens the way business is done, it's very, very difficult to break through. And even if you have a demonstrated cure, and that's like the ultimate gaslight in a way. And so you can look at someone like RFK Jr., and I know probably he's an inflammatory person to bring up, but this is a man who, in
I don't
my
know, I'm kind of intrigued by what he's doing, you know?
Uh-huh.
no,
Same.
in my mind, he is taking on the establishment at huge
Yes.
risk
Yes.
to himself,
Yes, he is.
uh, and it like it's just interesting when someone comes along with incredible courage and bravery, and what the establishment will do to a person like that to invalidate him, to silence him,
Yeah.
to assassinate him. They don't have to kill him, they just have to make people think he's a lunatic and crazy
Yep.
Mhm.
and selfish and narcissistic, and like, but it is a very, I'm very, very interested in whistleblowers. I'm
Mhm.
very interested in people that are courageous enough to step up at huge risk to themselves. And I believe he's one of those people.
I
And
do
I
too.
think I think there are lots of people that presented during COVID that would fit that description. And I think you guys are. I mean, you know, and if you're eventually you're going to attract enough attention that people are going to start slandering you in the New York
Yeah,
Times.
I'm waiting for it. I can't
That's
wait.
right. Just
Like,
you
I'm just waiting for us to get that big where we get noticed and the whistleblowing shrinks get noticed in this way where we can be like, okay, ready, let's go.
do you know about quackwatch.com?
Yes.
So
No, what the
quackwatch,
hell's that?
so it's a slandering website that keeps track of uh, of doctors that are doing bad things in the world. And
Oh.
but every single doctor on there is a trailblazer.
Yep.
So I tell people, if you're looking for a new doctor or you're looking for someone to read,
Go there.
go to quackwatch.com and read anyone on quackwatch.com. You have to assume that there's someone that is innovative and threatening the status quo. And
Mm.
so
Yes.
I have a lot of interest in just in anyone thinking outside the box and anyone willing uh, to like undo the programs. We've all been programmed. We're programmed in whatever field we're programmed in. This is right, this is wrong, this is good practice, this is bad practice. And those boxes are limited, I think. And I think most people, like the people that are making connections, this box to this other box. So nutrition, functional medicine, psychotherapy, like, and we're ahead. We are creating a paradigm that is no longer contained by any of the boxes. Somatics and yoga and journeying and all of these things, there's like new space being created. But the people that are doing it are putting themselves at risk in certain ways,
Yes.
Mhm.
because there's going to be blowback, and there is
Yes.
blowback in small ways. So I practice. I have a license in psychology. I have a board here in a conservative state in the United States. And I, for 10, 15 years, I've been waiting to hear from my state board. Um, and,
Uh-huh.
Do you
and
know
it,
how many people
I
on
yeah.
TikTok have threatened to turn me
Yeah.
into the
I'm just
board?
waiting. I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the day.
right.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
to get asked to speak at the American Psychological Association means that this is the highest, kind of the highest
Yep.
authority. I mean, it's a professional organization, but this is like kind of like, this is like the home planet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're the people that set the tone. And for the American Psychological Association, and I spoke to Dr. Greenblatt, and I said, "Hey, their American Psychological Association's interested." He said, I tried 3 years ago to get in there. And so this is like a very big doctor who tried 3 years ago.
Yeah.
He said the zeitgeist is changing. So they were not interested. They didn't have
Yeah.
the he was infrared and they couldn't see infrared.
Yeah.
And so the field is catching up to us. And
I want to say I agree with you, and I'm going to tell you why. Because maybe it was a year ago or so, the APA also reached out to me
okay.
to have me be a professional that when they get media inquiries to
Wow.
come to me
Right.
as one of them. And I thought to
Amazing.
myself, I was like, this is pretty incredible because I can be pretty controversial.
That's
And
right.
they were okay with having that as a contact. And I'm like, I had to take that in
That
for a
is
small second. Like, you know.
Well, the APA
So
has not reached out to me yet, so you two can just go have your little APA party, and I'll just
just
watch from
wait.
the
Just
sideline.
wait. You're next.
it'll
It's
happen.
gonna
It'll
rub off.
happen. That's right. That's right.
Have
So
you
I mean,
gotten
they
have you gotten inquiries?
No, no.
oh, you, I don't know if you're
She
talking to
does.
Jen or to
Terry
me.
does.
Terry,
Terry
have you
gets them
Yes.
all the
gotten
time. I have
Mm-hmm.
not
good.
gotten any
Yes.
yet, and I'm pretty loud and vocal and obnoxious, and so I'm just like, well, maybe I'm too much for people.
I think it's good to be too much for people. I mean, I think the truth
Hmm.
is you have to be willing because when you're doing new things, you have to keep on doing them and wait for people to catch up. It's like
It's
Hmm.
true.
it is it's interesting to have been doing something for long enough that people are starting to catch up. I find that super interesting. Yeah.
I find it super fun, actually,
Yeah.
because especially when you can apply this stuff in practice where you've never been able to do this before and you see results.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
when you have the sickest people come to you and you make small changes, like something as small as eat more protein more frequently,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, okay." Or even better, have a little protein before bed and see if you sleep a little bit better. You
Yeah.
know, I had somebody that I did that with, and they did, and they said, "Why did I struggle all these years
Right.
when I really just needed to stabilize my blood sugar to sleep?" You
Yeah.
know, like I'm like,
One
some of this we overcomplicate everything,
I
you
think that's
know?
right. One thing that's really interesting, like having gone down the functional medicine rabbit hole and done training and taken stuff on all these weird co-infections and
Yep.
mycotoxins and all these arcane little things. I think the field more and more is moving back to helping people make simple changes in their lives. With
Mhm.
like have protein for have 75 grams of protein, have 25 grams of protein, the size of your palm, 3 times in a bed, like just like very simple things.
Yeah.
And because I'm an I don't know, because that's my basic assumption, I thought I had to know everything, but really, like these simple things are enough. And
Mhm.
in the talk I gave at IMMH, I basically said the whole talk was like, "Hey, can you be a functional medicine practitioner if you never, can if you can't order functional medicine tests?" And there's a Dr. Dan Kalish. He has this quote. He basically says, 80% of functional medicine is lifestyle change.
Mhm.
It's diet,
Yeah.
it's rest, it's your relationships, it's stress management. And
Yep.
like that's a revolution, especially when the world of functional medicine has become so specialized. But you don't
Mhm.
have to be a brainiac to tell people to eat more protein. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I feel like when you do say things like that, a lot of times people want a more complicated answer,
They do.
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, it
And
can't be that simple. Water and protein, like,
I know.
yeah,
you know?
and
Mhm.
I think that's right because I think with the internet, everyone's gotten, oh, do you have mold mycotoxins? Like, here are the symptoms. Oh, this is symptoms of candida infection. Like all
Yeah.
this like fancy,
Yes.
fancy stuff.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
when you tell someone, it's sort of like uh, when the Dalai Lama says just be happy, it's like with the weight of all the lamas since the beginning of the earth.
Yeah.
Like like these are great, like the that people want to complicate things. It can't be that
Yeah.
simple.
Right.
And
Yeah.
a lot of this, and sort of like I know one of your teachers is Christina, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like great at simple stuff. Julia
Yeah.
Ross. And in some ways, like 10 years ago, they got left in the dust. And oh,
This is funny.
you're not doing the organic acid test. Oh my God. You must
Yes.
not be a real functional medicine practitioner. And the really smart ones just kept their practice going. And they kept on doing the same things. And now the world is coming back. So I keep on talking about my wife, but so she teaches a very simple kind of ashram style yoga. That's She just teaches basic hatha yoga that she learned in an ashram from a guru like 40 years ago. And so I watched her during the 90s when hot yoga happened and yin yoga happened and everyone wanted and flow yoga and everyone wanted to wear Lululemon pants and do handstands and headstands. And
Yes.
she just like, I watched her. I mean, not that it wasn't a struggle, but I watched her just do her practice.
Yes.
And people just dwindled. There might have been two or three people in the class where they
Mm.
had been 25 because they were going to do Bikram and ayahuasca and all kinds of stupid shit.
Yeah.
Not that, and she like now, and she would do Ayurveda and she would tell people to eat proteins and she
Yep.
would say
Yeah.
like massage your face massage, like just simple, beautiful, like stuff that your grandma would know.
Yes.
Yes.
Eat real foods, like don't drink soda like so much, like just the
Yes.
basics. And now it's so funny because all the young kids that used to want to be like all hot and do handstands and headstands are like, oh, nervous system, and I want to like be
Yeah.
in parasympathetic, so they want to study with the old lady that does parasympathetic
Yes.
Yes.
yoga. She
Well,
doesn't
the
call it
Vegas
that.
nerve is making a comeback. Like,
Right,
mhm.
and she's always been the vagus nerve lady. She didn't know that's
Yep.
what we're supposed to call it, but now she
Yep.
Yeah.
know. But
The
I think it's
terminology.
really interesting. It's such a nice conversation.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you talk about Christina. When we talk about Christina, it's Christina Veselak, and she
Yeah,
was actually on the show a few episodes ago.
right.
Yeah.
Wonderful episode. But when I was at the conference, I saw many of the original gangsters in this space, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So Christina Veselak, Hyla Cass,
yep.
there was several, and I approached Hyla, and I said, I have been following you for years, and I wanted to say that I feel like you've gotten overlooked. Like I feel like
Mhm.
you didn't get your chance in the sun, like whatever. And she looked at me and she said, I never wanted it. She goes, all I
Really,
wanted to do was help people. And I was like,
huh.
well, then help people you did.
You
So
succeeded.
I was like, this is very interesting to me. And I feel similarly with Christina, and
Yeah,
some of the other people, but I think that's a generationally meaning the next generation of this type
yeah,
of thinkers. And, but those are the people
Yeah.
that I learned from, and it's been a very interesting journey. And I resonate so deeply with the idea of, I don't know enough, I'll never know enough. But then also at the same time, just getting back to the basics of what I
huh.
do know, you know? We
Yeah.
don't
I
need to
think
know all
that's.
this other stuff.
I'm just starting that. Like I'm
We're in
starting
it
to.
together.
Yeah, I'm just starting to realize like I'm enough. Like, and that's my
Mhm.
mantra. And out of IMMH, there's things that have happening for like all these opportunities are happening for me that
Yeah.
I didn't expect to happen. And it's like breathing into like being enough and knowing that I'll figure it out as I go and saying yes, and not deferring to others as inherently being smarter and better, and just saying I have a lane. I know my lane, and the more I embrace and I'm clear on my lane, the more helpful I can be. And My job isn't to help everyone, it's to be of service to humans and to know when it's time. If I can't help someone, I never think they're treatment resistant, not because I don't know enough, that's what I used to think, but because there's a million ways to heal. And
Right.
there's a million people in the world. And what are the chances that my brand of beauty is going to be what this person needs?
Needs. Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, maybe there will, and maybe
Yeah.
there won't. And I, I, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's really, I've learned how to be humble without being too humble. like,
Yes.
like I want to be a humble badass. I want to like I want to own power, but I don't want to be arrogant because I've seen what that looks like.
Oh,
Like
yes.
Oh, that's a good line.
the cool thing is like we're regular people. We're like just people out there that are doing the work and like learning and doing our lives and helping people. And like it's sort of like I feel like we're on the ground in a way where we just are working, trying to be of service to the world. And like you said about Hyla, like we're just here. We're part of the army, and we're going to raise the next youth. We're going to raise the youth as much as we can to be courageous people, to question authority, to not accept, to not accept anyone ever saying someone's treatment resistant. Like, okay, like what does that mean? Because really, treatment resistant means that this particular person hasn't found a way and the tools to help them.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that those tools don't exist.
Hmm.
And that's like, it's like letting go of hubris. It's not leaning in too much like to our doctorates. It's like saying, yeah, like this is a beginning. Like I want to flex so I can get a good table at a restaurant, but
It'll
I don't.
happen.
No, I never do that. I remember my therapist used to say to me, he's like, when I would be in the middle of my doctorate and say, I can't do it, I'm never gonna make it. He's like, get the fuck out, get the biggest degree you possibly can, so they have to listen. And like we
Mhm.
should, like we should all be. We're few in numbers, so we have to have loud voices. And you should, Jen, you should be so loud that people can't ignore you in your class.
And your
No, but
glasses,
My
I
yes.
mean,
glasses.
I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. I don't know. I feel really grateful to be here, and really grateful to be part of this whole emerging thing. And I'm just trying to enjoy, like when I got off the stage at IMMH, my typical thing would be to downplay everything, and it was okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, that was fucking awesome.
It was
I
awesome,
actually
and
said
people
to
stayed.
my daughter's 21 years old, and I got on the phone with her, and I was like, Daisy, I just did this thing. It was the best thing of my whole life. And she said, well, didn't you have a baby 21 years
Named
ago?
Daisy.
Named Daisy. And it was funny. But it
Oh.
was like, I was like, and then I went up to the person who did the conference, Kiki, and I started crying. Because I was like, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. But it was like, I've been doing all this in silence for years. And
Yeah,
I've never
you
felt
got a
I
voice.
never felt really validated. I mean, I've been validated in my little work, in my little office, but
Yeah.
to feel the validation and like to feel like, oh, I had something to help these people with. And it felt like it was like really, it was very unexpected. I went in thinking I was going to have a stroke up there. So I didn't think it was going to, I never thought it was going to go like feel like rich and so I just like took it all in. I was like, okay, I'm gonna open my heart to this. I'm gonna take as much in and I'm just say yes. That was great. I know it was fucking awesome.
It was awesome, and
But no,
everybody
just like to have that moment, like, and not
yes.
nothing more, nothing less. Like it was just like, oh, this is good, and I felt like it said more about us, like us as a field, us
Yeah.
as therapists, us as people, like moving beyond the box, that like this is us, we're being born. It was the first time a therapist had ever spoken at that conference. So it was awesome, I thought. And next year will be more awesome. One of you guys should speak.
Yeah,
There you
that
go.
is going to be a thing. I've already told Terry that it's
Yeah.
happening,
So
and
I so I
yeah,
I spoke to I did a debrief with Kiki, who ran the conference,
yeah.
and was like, okay, so you realize what has to happen.
Mhm.
We need more
There needs to be
therapists
more.
because there's
Exactly.
lots of therapists. There are lots of
Yep.
therapists. It was like, I'm no more special than 50 other people. They would have their own flavor of this. We need
Yep.
more therapists up there because next year you're going to have 400 therapists.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have, I think there were 1,200 people. There was,
Yep.
there's so 800 800 doctor types and 400 therapists,
Mm-hmm.
or 300. Next year there's going to be 400 because
Yep.
the fire, like, it's happening. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the energy is going to only combust. It's going to happen.
It's the age of Aquarius, Josh. You know this is happening right now.
The age, yeah, it is,
It
yeah,
is. So
yeah, and they need us. They need
I
us.
know.
Hopefully they won't kill us.
We're
Well, on that
hoping that
note,
that does not
this is a
happen.
good one to wrap up on here.
All right.
So, everybody, you have been listening to the Gaslit Truth podcast. We got to thank Dr. Josh Friedman again for coming on.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. It was a
Thank you
great
for
time.
being
Thank
here.
you. I
You have
really
fully
appreciate
enlightened us. And actually, I feel pretty energized after listening to you for an
Yeah.
hour that I feel like I need to go do some humble badass shit right about
Yeah.
now.
it. Humble
So,
badass. That's what
I
we
know
have.
what that's going to be, but for all of you that are listening, please make sure you like, subscribe, give us the stars, give us the comments. You can listen to the Gaslit Truth podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And for today, we humble badasses are out.
Bye.
Bye.